With Masai Ujiri reshaping the roster ahead of this year's trade deadline, we have a couple of updates about other things that could potentially happen regarding this Toronto Raptors squad. As the Celtics have reportedly been linked to Chris Boucher and hoping on landing another big and bolstering their big man depth. And we have an update on Jonathan Kuminga, who's a guy that has expressed frustration with the Golden State Warriors and has long been a target for the Toronto Raptors. So lots of stuff to dive into in this video. Before we dive into that, folks, over 56% of our viewers are not subscribed to the channel. So it would mean the world to me if you guys could hit that subscribe button, as we're going to continue to deliver all of the latest Toronto Raptors news. But let's dive into the first topic of discussion. The first thing we're taking a look at is Chris Boucher linked to the Boston Celtics. Now, obviously, Chris Boucher this season has had somewhat of a down year, definitely just looking directly at the numbers. I mean, this season, Boucher only averaging 6 points per game, 4 rebounds, 46% from the field, 34% from the three-point line, which is actually above his career average. Free throws are down a bit, but he has been playing remarkably inconsistent minutes, and it's something that's been brought up on the broadcasts consistently over the past couple weeks. And, the last game against the Sacramento Kings, Boucher has really broken out for this team, getting back to the mold and then hopefully asserting himself back into, established rotation player. Obviously, with Precious gone and OG Anunoby gone, Precious's minutes were definitely dwindling at the end of his Raptors career, but OG gone especially, there's a lot more need for front court players that can defend in the front line for the Toronto Raptors and everything like that. So Boucher is probably going to be more valuable to this team in the second half of this year under Darko's system than he did at the first little bit of the season, but that doesn't stop other teams from being interested in acquiring his services, as Jake Fisher came out and reported that the Celtics have been looking for some front court help, and Chris Boucher is someone that they've always liked for a while. Now, Chris Boucher, especially, a couple seasons ago, it was sort of a meme. Whenever he played against the Sixers, against the Celtics, he would just go absolutely nuclear. He would really pop off against the division rivals, against those division teams. So we get why those organizations might be interested in acquiring a Chris Boucher's services. But frankly, looking at the Celtics roster, looking at what they give up, unless it's a fleece as well, because again, I'm not trying to help the Boston Celtics in any which way. Rather let Chris Boucher walk for nothing than getting some minuscule assets back and building up a division rival, specifically the Boston Celtics. So I don't want to see a deal happen. Look at the Celtics roster. I mean, obviously, we're not getting Drew Holiday, Kristaps, Jason Tatum, or Jaylen Brown, or Derek White in a potential Chris Boucher trade. I mean, Al Horford right now is pretty old, doesn't really fit our timeline that much. And Boucher, even though he hasn't had the greatest of seasons, I just don't think it makes sense for Al Horford to come back in a Toronto Raptors deal because, he's got those 2 years left on his contract. He's dwindling a little bit, and he's just a Celtics guy as well. So I don't imagine he'd be in any trade from the Boston Celtics, either for Chris Boucher specifically, maybe some other player across the league. But then we get into the realistic guys. And Peyton Pritchard has a big contract he just signed this offseason, and he has not really lived up to expectations. And the Raptors now, after the Emmanuel Quickley trade, still with Dennis Schroeder in the lineup, are currently loaded at the point guard depth. And maybe you could say, hey, whenever Peyton Pritchard plays in Toronto, he just goes bananas shooting threes. So maybe that would carry over with the Raptors and then, really pop off for the squad. So I won't argue with you there, but I'm not that interested in Pritchard given how our roster's shaken up. And then you have the other guys, O'Shea Brissett, who's a guy that left Toronto, Luke Cornett, who has been solid, but I mean, he's not an upgrade over Chris Boucher. Delano Banton, probably not bringing him back. Lamar Stevens is a guy that I've had interest in over his career, but hasn't really blossomed out. But Sam Hauser would provide shooting. I don't think he'd be in a potential deal. And then Jordan Walsh is a young rookie with a lot of upside. So what would the Boston Celtics really be giving us if a deal were to happen? I get it that Chris Boucher has sort of been underutilized for the Toronto Raptors and everything like that, but we're not dealing to the Boston Celtics so we can break out and have those crazy games against Toronto rather than those other interdivisional rivals. So, personally, I don't want to see a Chris Boucher happen. I don't know how it would really go down. Maybe if there was picks involved and then salary filler, then that would be cool. But if Masai Ujiri can get multiple firsts for Chris Boucher at this point, it might be good. But again, we need front court depth ourselves here in Toronto. So It's unless you're completely reshaping the roster, which doesn't seem like it's off the table, where Siakam trades are happening, and we'll dive into that in the second half of this video. But unless, the roster's completely reshaped, just dealing with Chris Boucher for not a lot of draft capital or just not great pieces back doesn't make any sense to the Toronto Raptors. So we'll see if that actually comes to fruition, or if anything really comes of that sort of report. Next thing we're taking a look at is the Warriors reluctant to trade Jonathan Kuminga. Now, it was widely known, it kind of popped off amongst NBA spheres, how Jonathan Kuminga is frustrated with his role on the Golden State Warriors, is frustrated with sort of his ability to reach his potential in Golden State under head coach Steve Kerr. Made it known, came out through Shams, but basically, the Warriors are unmoved. He has, Michael Grange came out with some reports breaking down the situation. So, talking about how he's been linked, and the Toronto Raptors fans have been interested in Kuminga. We've had reports specifically regarding past packages with OG Anunoby about Kuminga, and even dating further back, Pascal during that 2021 NBA draft. So, the Raptors have long been linked. We've all been looking at the sort of reports and stuff, but this is what Grange came out and said, saying that except the dots don't always connect, even though Toronto Raptors fans, like several teams as the trade deadline rounds into view, will be paying close attention to determine all the recent tumult with the Warriors will move up their timeline. Still, according to multiple sources, the Warriors loathe to trade Kuminga, who is seen as a potential star and who could help them win now and in the future. The rare piece on the roster who can help the Golden State Warriors support Steph Curry in the present and transition to a successful post-Curry future should it ever come. So, the headline from this article, it's really been going around, is the Warriors view him as a star player. They'd be reluctant to give him up in Siakam trade discussions. And personally, there's no world where they get Siakam if they don't give up Jonathan Kuminga. So we can just write that off the table, write that off the wall as the Warriors a potential destination. If they're not willing to give up Jonathan Kuminga, again, this is likely a leverage play, leaking it to Grange, just sort of, do some posturing in the media, do these types of things. But there's no world where Pascal Siakam goes to Golden State where Jonathan Kuminga is not involved. It's off the table. It's let him walk for nothing. Maybe that's an exaggeration. People don't like that sort of idea, but the Warriors, if they want Pascal Siakam, they're going to have to give up multiple young pieces, have to give up some picks, and, Chris Paul's sort of expiring is in that deal as well. But Grange also went on to say that, and it's also not a insignificant detail, Kuminga is said to have a very close relationship with the Warriors owner Joe Lacob, so they have a tight sort of bond, and apparently Grange also goes on to say, I won't read this whole passage verbatim, that trading James Wiseman was a tough sell on ownership last season, and things didn't really work out there, and he's a piece that could have been really good for the Golden State Warriors if things end up shaking out the right way. And it's also worth pointing out that 24 hours after the reports that Kuminga's frustration has surfaced, he had only good things to say about his relationship with Kerr and played a season-high 36 minutes in Golden State's win over the Detroit Pistons. And Kerr also had some words regarding Kuminga's comments, saying that he played, I don't know how many years he played in the league, but he was frustrated about minutes every single season. So it was a bit candid. I feel like if there's actual turmoil between Kuminga and Kerr, it wouldn't be that sort of nice and posturing in the media and stuff. So again, this doesn't, in my opinion, completely write the Golden State Warriors off as a potential Siakam trade destination, but I do think it should dampen some of the expectations that the Raptors are going to be able to get Moody, Kuminga, picks, and lots of sort of assets from the Golden State Warriors in a potential package. Again, the Golden State Warriors, even though they have fumbled some trades as of late, just like the Toronto Raptors, they aren't a pushover organization that's going to give up their talent for nothing. So definitely keep your eyes peeled about all the stuff that could potentially go on regarding the Toronto Raptors. Subscribe to the Raptors side just if you want to stay up to date with everything. Anyways, I'm signing out. Cheers.